Non, les étrangers, on a fait fort. Je vous donne les mains, comme on dit vulgairement. C'est vrai qu'on sait qu'on a souvent l'habitude de frauder le système d'immigration, mais ce que j'ai écouté dans cette vidéo est tout simplement ahurissant. Aujourd'hui, nous nous plaignons du fait que le Canada est en train de changer sa politique d'immigration, renforcer les lois et abolir certains systèmes d'immigration. Je suis tombée sur ce reportage qui est en réalité le témoignage d'un avocat chevronné en matière d'immigration. Il passait devant une commission parlementaire et j'ai tenu à partager ces instants-là avec mes abonnés pour que chacun de nous puisse se faire une idée sur l'intensité de la fraude en ce qui concerne l'immigration au Canada et pourquoi le Canada prend ces mesures drastiques. C'est vrai que les mesures qui sont prises vont certainement désavantager ceux qui voulaient immigrer de manière légale et qui voulaient tout simplement profiter d'un système juste et équitable. Mais le fait que beaucoup de personnes aient fraudé le système, nous arrivons à tout ce qu'on voit au jour d'aujourd'hui en partie. Et d'un autre côté, beaucoup de voix s'élèvent aussi contre le gouvernement canadien, contre le système canadien qui n'est pas, je dirais, fiable, qui n'est pas assez robuste pour que toutes ces fraudes-là ne puissent pas se produire. Alors, sans toutefois bavarder longtemps, je vous laisse juste suivre ce reportage-là de cet avocat chevronné et je vous retrouve juste après.
Okay, by way of introduction, I've been a lawyer in Vancouver since 1989. For 25 years, I was a well-known immigration lawyer, specializing in skilled workers, business immigrants, and helping Canadian employers seeking to hire foreign nationals. In 2014, my career went sideways when I moved to Ottawa for 7 years to become the chairperson of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. Since returning to Vancouver in 2021, I worked for 3 years for the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, the regulatory body for immigration consultants in Canada. I was a vice chair of their discipline tribunal where I heard complaints about immigration fraud and consultant misconduct. I've been in the trenches for a long time and I've seen a lot, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Your other witnesses have told you much about the good, and there is a lot of good. But today, I'm going to tell you about the bad and the ugly because you need to hear this. So let's start with temporary foreign workers and LMIA fraud and abuse. LMIA stands for Labor Market Impact Assessment and is a key document that allows a foreign worker to get a work permit and in many cases permanent residence. LMIAs are so valuable that there is an underground market for them. People will pay tens of thousands of dollars for an LMIA that will allow them to work at a lousy job, but with the end goal of permanent residence as a possibility. I recommend you read my discipline decision last year in the Barrowall case, where young men from India were paying $40,000 to get an LMIA to work as a truck driver for an employer that actually owned no trucks. Their labor was subcontracted out and they were paid only $10 an hour. When they complained, their consultant threatened to arrange their deportation. So they continued to work in slave-like conditions until their permanent residence came through. LMIA abuse like this is happening everywhere and on a huge scale. Next item. Police checks and CSIS background checks. Police checks from certain countries are not worth the paper they're written on, and we need to stop kidding ourselves about that. The Foreign Minister of India has gone on the record warning Canada that we are admitting serious criminals from their country. I recommend you read a paper I wrote earlier this year for the Macdonald-Laurier Institute about CSIS background checks for prospective immigrants who are suspected of terrorism or organized crime. In a bizarre decision related to my former Human Rights Tribunal, we somehow concluded that CSIS background checks are not a matter of national security and make immigration officers vulnerable to a human rights complaint for ordering one. Next item. This recent push to prioritize French-speaking immigrants needs a rethink. Under the express entry system, French speakers are so highly prioritized, they are now displacing even healthcare workers in the selection process. Immigration lawyers and consultants are now coaching their clients to take French classes to boost their chances. The express entry system was designed to admit people with valuable job skills. With all due respect to my Francophone friends, how is French a job skill especially in places like Western Canada. And we all know the majority of these French-speaking immigrants are from developing countries who may have no other valuable job skills to ensure their success in Canada. Next item, regional immigration programs, where foreigners are granted permanent residence based on a promise to live in Quebec or some other province, or the new rural community immigration pilot. All of these destination programs are a waste of time and will be until you do something to enforce the regional residency requirement after they arrive. These programs are all actively promoted as the backdoor route into Canada. Either issue conditional visas or invoke the notwithstanding clause or do something. Otherwise, we should quit wasting time on these regional destination programs. The next item is citizenship fraud. It's way bigger than you think it is, and we need to stop the fraud. And we need to stop giving away Canadian citizenship so freely and with such low thresholds. And please bring back mandatory in-person citizenship swearing-in ceremonies. Have we really devalued our citizenship that much that we're happy to let that happen online? A person can go through all their immigration, temporary, permanent residence applications, and now citizenship ceremonies without ever actually meeting a Canadian official. My last item is about Canada's fertility crisis, and it's worse than it ever was. Immigration was supposed to fix it. I've been working in this area for longer than a generation, and I have to be honest and ask, has mass immigration made conditions better or worse for young people thinking about starting a family? We keep admitting people faster than we can build housing for them, so of course the costs go up. We need to start having an honest conversation about this. That's my short list, and I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Thomas, I read some of your articles, and they seem to share one theme. That is, if you take tempting incentives put together with weak consequences, it equals predictable abuse. So if Parliament were to fix one thing, what do you think is the priority from an immigration standpoint?
Well, my favorite saying is what you permit, you promote, and what gets permitted by ircc, I can guarantee, is very strongly promoted through the immigration industry around the world. So that's a good thing to remember. I think what I mentioned, I think is most important thing for us right now is to really do a better job of doing background checks on people that are coming to this country. I think that we're allowing huge numbers of people in under temporary status that we didn't do in the past, and we're not doing as thorough background checks on those people that are coming in under that temporary status. And I think that we can see that has been leading to problems. So that would be my number one fix that I would encourage the committee to look at.
Thanks. You also cited a sharp rise in inland refugee claims, which has resulted in a major backlog, of course. In your view, what proportion of current asylum claims are driven by protection needs versus people that are just system shopping, looking for a good deal for citizenship?
Well, I think the facts speak for themselves, right? I mean, that a lot of the people that have applied for refugee status from within Canada are people that have their status, their temporary status expiring. We've had a huge spike from the citizens of Mexico. We had done away with the visitor visa requirement for Mexican citizens a second time in 2016 up until 2024 was a mistake. It happened in the early 2000s as well. It led to a big spike of inland claims. And now we're seeing the biggest number of inland claims are from Indian nationals, and many of them came here under temporary status. So you do have to question, what is the underlying motivation?
In your experience, what would you estimate are the number of so-called legitimate asylum claims, people who truly are fearing for their lives?
Well, that's a little bit hard to say, in all honesty. I was not a refugee focused lawyer in my day, but I do speak to people who are adjudicators at the IRB from time to time, and I think that there often is a feeling, I think, within the tribunal itself as to whether or not how hard we want to scrutinize applications for people coming in, because I think that the bigger question is, what is Canada's overall goal in terms of bringing people in? There are some people that believe we should be bringing in 1 million people a year, right? The Century Initiative that wants to have 100 million people in Canada by the end of the century. If your push is we need bodies, we need people, we're not very selective as to where they come from, then you're not going to press very hard on those things, are you? You're going to let people walk across the road, self-select themselves as they did crossing Roxham Road when that was open, or other people just coming here in temporary status and making artificial refugee claims. And I think that that's largely driven by what the government of Canada really sees as its objective for bringing people into the country, and on what sort of scale.
Sorry to interrupt you, but are you saying though that this is the government's direction, or the government's lack of direction, so that those folks at the IRB think, oh well, you know what, I'm going to err on the side of letting this person in because it seems like that's what the government wants? Is that kind of what you're saying? I'm sort of hinting that way, although of course this is not a empirical study. This is just my gut feeling based on people I've talked to. So I guess to carry on along those lines, you spent time with the Immigration Consultant Society. What kinds of changes or improvements do you think could be made there? I mean, there's lots of issues with consultants. I think there's been attempts to get it under control in Canada, but we know that there's lots of people from outside the country that are maybe difficult to control. But do you have any suggestions on what we could change or improve on that front?
Well, I think that we need to probably do a better job, and I think there are moves to be a little bit more selective in terms of who we permit to be consultants. I mean, the kinds of conduct that I saw as a tribunal member was unbelievable, and a lot of people, frankly, should not be regulated at all. They're not suitable for that, and I think that we need to be more selective of that. The other massive problem, I've been told that there are more unlicensed immigration consultants in the province of Punjab in India than there are of all fully licensed immigration consultants in Canada. So the problem is astronomical. I don't think we have a good sense of how big the numbers are.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the one-touch system, but we had some testimony here a couple of weeks ago.
Where
the CBSA is essentially allowed to funnel people into the so-called low-risk category, which then allows those people to, tap a few buttons in a system and get into the country and do all their paperwork after the fact. Are you familiar with that, and do you think that that's contributing to some of our asylum problems?
I'm not really familiar with that system, but I think that, we've really moved away. When I started practicing law, every person who applied for permanent residence in Canada sat down, had an interview with an immigration officer. There was a lot more interaction going on, and we've really done away with that. And so now it's like a faceless process. And as I said in my opening remarks, we don't even insist that people come in for a swearing-in ceremony when they become a Canadian citizen. I think it's sad, and I think we're robbing the immigrants themselves of that opportunity to celebrate that moment.
Alors, j'espère que tu as suivi, comme moi, tout ce que cet avocat chevronné avait à dire en ce qui concerne l'immigration au Canada. C'est triste de voir tout ça se produire, c'est triste de voir les règles ainsi resserrées, mais comme je le dis toujours, c'est vrai qu'il y en a qui vont payer pour ce que les autres ont fait, et c'est dommage. Donc, dis-moi en commentaire ce que tu penses sur tout ce chapelet de fraude et d'abus, et j'aimerais aussi savoir quel est ton avis en ce qui concerne le futur de l'immigration ici au Canada. Merci beaucoup d'avoir suivi cette vidéo et je vous retrouve sur une prochaine vidéo. À bientôt. Bye.